In today's episode, we're talking about the milestones that you need to keep an eye out for when your little one turns 18 months old. So, a lot of research has shown that birth to 3 years is the most crucial age for development in terms of brain development, right? And this is why I believe that the skills that your child develops when they're 18 months old, they're extremely essential because this is what is paving their way for picking up higher order skills, right? Which is what is going to dictate their development for the next year and a half to 2 years old. While it is extremely essential for them to have these skills, there's something that I feel is very important for me to mention that you need to keep in mind is that a lot of children may not have managed to reach all of the things that I'm talking about today, and that's okay, right? So my son is not doing all of the things that I'm going to be talking about, and I know he's going to be fine. But if you do feel that you would like a little bit of support, do reach out to a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist or even a speech language pathologist so that you're able to start working on the things that you feel are maybe your child is lagging behind in, or that you would like a little bit of support, right? So a lot of times the children who have not yet started walking or have not yet started talking, 90%, 98% of them tend to be able to start doing it either on their own or with support. So trust the process because each child takes its own time. They kind of develop at their own pace. So definitely trust the process. So let's get started. Today we're covering 4 core areas. We're talking about social emotional learning, we're talking about cognitive skills, we're talking about language, and finally we're talking about fine motor and gross motor skills. So when it comes to social emotional skills and social emotional milestones, the few things that really stand out are: one, when your little one wants something that they're really trying to communicate that they want something, they can be doing it by words or by pointing to indicate and say, hey, I'm interested in this item, right? So they go beyond babbling and vocalizing, and they move to being able to communicate that there is a need, that they want something or that they don't want something. So that communication needs to have started by now. The next thing is that your little one really enjoys stories, right? So they'll take time out to sit with you, to either flip through pages of a book or maybe to listen to you when you're kind of narrating a story. And they start to become engaged in the storytelling process, right? So they start to enjoy the characters that you bring into the story, or the way you describe the characters, or the sounds that you're making. And they start becoming an active part of it, and they start asking for more, right? So they start communicating that they're enjoying this activity and that they would like more of it. Another thing that you should start to have noticed is that they start anticipating certain activities, right? So they maybe put their hands under the tap when they know it's time for them to wash their hands, or they could even be helping with dressing. So you're trying to put a t-shirt on, and they kind of give you their right arm to put through the sleeve, or they give you their leg to put through the sleeve of their pants, whatever it may be, right? So they start anticipating the processes, and they should know what step is next, right? So they start being able to help out in a sense with these activities. So this would actually be more of self-help skills, but pushing their arms through shirts or helping to straighten their legs when they're wearing pants. They're anticipating the routine of these activities, right? So they know what step comes after which, and they start to be able to help out with it. Next, we're talking about language, which is very, very important in terms of milestones, because we're always concerned about speech delay. We're concerned about whether our child is speaking enough, is saying enough number of words, right? So one big thing that happens at 18 months old is that your little one should be able to start following one-step commands without gestures, right? So we're not talking about the number of words that they're saying. We're not talking about whether they're able to call you mama or papa, or whether they're able to point to their favorite fruit. We're talking about receptive language, which becomes extremely important at this age, right? So language is made up of 2 parts. We talk about expressive language and receptive language. So expressive is when they start using words to convey what they want. Receptive is when they start to understand things that are being said to them, right? So receptive language is extremely important when they turn 18 months old, because this starts to pave the way for higher order functions. It also means that they're able to understand, that their comprehension is there, that they're able to label items, right? So they know that this particular word means so and so. They might not be able to say it, and that's perfectly all right, right? So the skill that you're looking at is 18 months old. is that they're able to follow one-step commands without gestures. So I could simply say, baby, bring your red ball, right? So then they'd know what that red ball means. They'd know where to look for it, and then he'd possibly go and pick it up and bring it to me, right? At least they would try to look for it and bring it. So we're not pointing at things, right? So I'm not pointing at the red ball and saying, bring it to me. I'm not making any gestures or not giving them any sort of clue. It's just a verbal set of instructions, right? It's a set of words that I'm saying verbally. So they need to have these receptive language skills, and they need to have the capacity to understand our language through words without pointing, without gesturing, without any kind of other sounds or clues that we're giving them. So the next thing is cognitive milestones, right? So when we're talking about cognitive skills, we're talking about things like learning, thinking, problem solving, right? So what you look for is whether your little one is starting to play with toys appropriately, right? So for example, maybe they have a car. So maybe they're pushing it back and forth and making some sort of sound that goes along with it, right? Or maybe they see a hairbrush or comb lying around and they bring it to their hair and they pretend to be brushing their hair because they've seen the good adults in their house doing that, right? So then they're also imitating chores or activities that take place around the house. So they see you cleaning up, and suddenly they want to be a part of that process too, right? So they maybe pick up a piece of cloth and they pretend to be wiping the floor with it, or pretend to be wiping their own hands or face with it, right? So they suddenly want to be in the middle of all of these things. They want to be imitating the things that they see you doing. So they want to sweep, maybe they're pretending to wipe down the table, and they understand that this is something that the family does, or the important people in their lives. It could be the parents, it could be the nanny, it could be the caretaker, and they understand that this is something that these people do, and they take an interest in trying to imitate. They may not be doing it perfectly, and that's perfectly all right, but there's an attempt to try to replicate that action, and that is what you'll be looking out for. When we're talking about fine and gross motor skills, we're talking about whether your little baby is able to start scribbling. So when you hand over a crayon to them and a piece of paper, do they try to make scribbles on their own, right? Not when you are holding their hand and guiding them, but this is something that they should be doing independently, right? You also look for to see if they're able to drink from an open cup. Spilling is perfectly all right. They're definitely going to spill, and that's okay. And they'll also probably be pretty proficient at feeding themselves with their fingers, so they're able to kind of pick up pieces of food and put it into their mouth. But they're also at this age lightly starting to use a spoon, or at least attempting to use a spoon, right? So they're trying to bring food onto the spoon and bring the spoon to their mouth, and they may not really be successful at getting the food into their mouth, and that's perfectly all right. But the attempt should be that interest in trying to use these different types of utensils and trying to mimic the things that people do with these around them. They're also probably walking independently without really holding on to anybody or anything, and possibly also scaling your furniture, so getting onto your sofas and off the sofas, off the bed, off the chairs quite easily. So I hope this has been helpful for you. As mentioned, if you are concerned, do reach out to your pediatrician. Maybe you can do a developmental screening, a developmental assessment to make sure that everything is going smoothly. And again, keep in mind that each child develops at their own pace. So trust the process and take deep breaths.